All right, today we're going to talk about two main ways that we can help property owners at MWM Property Management. There's two things that property owners are always looking for. They want to make more money and they want to have less headaches on their plate, right?
Yeah.
I mean, time and time again, when we talk to a new client, they're fed up with dealing with, the turnover of tenants, the little maintenance issues, the headaches are just piling up and they don't want to touch it. And the other thing is, obviously, if they're looking at it from an investment standpoint, even if they just own one building, they want to make more money. So specifically today, we're going to dive in on how we can help the landlord here, our client, the investor, make more money through the reduction of operating expenses. Because there's only two ways to make more money. You raise the rent or you cut the expense. And a thing that we try to do, because we manage so many commercial properties around town and in our market, is we do this in a way that's like super, not only efficient, but we want to think about the tenant at the same time, because we don't want to just think, hey, cut expense at all costs and scare the tenant away and not do things right by them, but we want to build this relationship long term. So you have any initial thoughts on all of that?
Sure. I mean, the tenant relationship is almost as important as the owner relationship or the landlord relationship. So, we've got to maintain that just like we've got to maintain the relationship with the owner. So when we're doing some of our preventative maintenance stuff, when we're doing some of our site visits, those kinds of things, it's my job to build that relationship and pop in and know everybody's first name and let them know me, so that if something is going on, they're going to reach out and not feel like there's a barrier there or a wall that it's not all business all the time. So
absolutely. And that's why I even bring this up at the beginning, because a lot of times we get into these conversations in the industry where it's like, cut operating expense at all cost, raise rents at all cost. But as I try to explain this, yes, ultimately our duty is to the owner of that property. And it absolutely is. But at the end of the day, what serves that owner, that investor, that, landlord best is having a long-term tenant in place if they're a good tenant, right?
That feels taken care of.
That feels taken care of, right?
Sure.
Because we're going to keep that vacancy down and we're going to keep that as a good growing relationship and good growing tenant. So
that's exactly right.
Perfect. Well, so we're going to try to hit 5 different items today in OpEx, and Andrew in our property management department here, he covers everything that has to do on property tenant relationship side. So he's going to speak to a couple of these items, how we can cut that OpEx to make it more efficient and ultimately grow the property value. We're going to grow that net operating income because of this cut in NOI. I mean, it's little tiny changes.
No doubt.
$10,000 annually, can grow that NOI substantially.
No doubt.
So let's start with number one, preventative maintenance. So talk about that.
So what we find is that if we have the right vendors in place, that we can have roof inspections done, we can have our contractors visit the tenants and look at the electrical panels. We can look at exterior lighting, parking lot deterioration, those types of things that might eventually be bigger ticket items. But if we're looking at those things on a monthly and quarterly basis with our vendors, then we can either be under contract with those vendors to do those preventative maintenance type things that we try and push that a little bit with our roofers to be sure that they're on site on a regular basis, so that we don't have any large gaps or anything like that happen where we have major roof leak issues. Same with the parking lot, same with lighting, electrical. So we try and do that on a monthly or quarterly basis to avoid those big ticket items, to see things, in advance of larger issues.
100%. And one of the great things that we produce as a property management division of Mosswork Matthews and Company is every month, the investor, the owner, is going to get a month, not just a financial report, but they're going to get a property walkthrough inspection report that Andrew handles, where he's going through the property and saying, hey, might need to look at seal coating and striping this parking lot. And, it may not be next month, right? We're doing this preventatively. So we might need to look at this next fall or next summer, whatever that cycle is. But so we could start escrowing money, saving money for that. And really just keeping an eye on things. And that, that owner gets that report and they see, okay, hey, we know we need to expect to spend some money a year from now, 6 months from now, however that is. So
same with the roof and the
100%.
gutters and those kinds of things.
Absolutely. Well, preventive maintenance is a huge item. So here's one that we're doing right now, shopping insurance. A lot of owners, when they come to us, they're like, here's our insurance policy, here's this. And there's, here's our contract, here's our insurance policy, here's our property tax bill, have fun. We're happy to manage your property and we're happy to just keep paying that insurance if that's what you want to do. But a service we offer is shopping that insurance, because a lot of times people just pay their renewal.
They get in a routine, and a lot of these owners have maybe been with the same agency for many, many years, tens of years sometimes. And that agency might have changed hands and they no longer have the relationship that they had with the original broker.
Yeah.
And so maybe communication isn't as good as it used to be. And therefore it's not being shopped like it needs to be shopped. And so we have relationships with insurance brokers, and our job is to be sure that they're doing their job.
Sure.
And that job is to make sure that you have the best rate every year.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of how we handle the insurance for the owners.
Absolutely. And that kind of
it's a big expense.
Oh, it's huge. And especially we're in coastal
properties,
North Carolina here. Even if you're 2 hours off the coast, hurricanes have impacts here. And just to talk about, just bring it back real quick to preventative maintenance. That's why we're doing those preventative maintenance programs on those roofs. Right. We have to make sure before each storm season, each winter season. We've had snow.
We just had snow
twice in 2 years. That's wild.
And there was a lot of preventative maintenance before the snow got here.
100%.
All our properties. So.
I never thought that back-to-back years I'd be lining up and you'd be lining up snowplows.
Right.
But here we are. But anyways, all that to say, shopping insurance, important. We'll do it for you. And a lot of times it's kind of surprising.
Can be.
What you can save by letting us shop it. Number 3, and I'll speak to this one a little bit and jump in on any of this, but this is kind of this falls under OPEX because it falls under the management agreement here. That we have with our clients, which are the owners. But this is like lease administration items, renegotiating leases. And this is a part, something that we can handle for you. A lot of times I see that self-managers, so owners, property owners, maybe they own 1 or if they own 10 properties, they're self-managing to try to save money. Mm-hmm. And while doing that, they don't necessarily understand all the language in those leases and what exactly the tenant is responsible for to be, to have expenses passed through. So maybe they have not a full triple net lease, maybe they have a double net lease, but the tenant's supposed to be paying, a portion of the HVAC bill, but the landlord doesn't quite understand what that means in the contract. Maybe it was a custom lease drawn up by their tenant that they had.
That's right. And a lot of times the owners use a simple lease, and the simple leases are gross.
Yeah.
And that puts all the expense on the owner.
100%.
And so as those, come up for renewal or there's times to negotiate, that's when you can step in and try and
100%
set it up so the owner can pass things through.
Absolutely. So we've had a lot of situations where things just weren't being enforced that were in there. And then we've had situations where we've switched over to triple net leases on particular properties that call for it. Now, again, I'm going to bring it back to what we talked to at the beginning. We're not trying to run people off here on a tenant perspective. We're trying to work with the landlord to make sure they're getting, their goals are being met, but maybe that is being met by us enforcing some of these things in the lease, explaining it to the tenant. We know it's always been done this way, but this is how the lease reads.
And we can show value to the tenant in what that money's being used for
100%.
And why they're paying it to the landlord.
So that lease administration piece is something that plugs into, our system as a whole and the property management division. And it takes a lot of not just explaining to the owner usually kind of has a feel for it, but it bridges the gap of like, hey, here's where we can provide value for the owner, and where you can go into the tenant on your side of things and say, hey, this is why we're doing what we're doing, and this is why it helps you,
Sure,
be a successful business.
I mean, recently we've had an owner that we've just taken over portfolio for that had become emotional between the tenants that they had and themselves because they were self-managing.
Right.
If there's a sob story with a tenant, they were dealing straight with the owner, and
Right.
now there's us in between, and we're
Yeah.
able to sort of shield that owner from that and explain it in a business mindset to the tenant.
Yep.
That this is, how the lease reads.
Right. And oh, by the way, that system implementing our system has gotten them a 94% increase in
Exactly.
income month over month.
Exactly.
So like that's a huge win for the owner, and the tenant doesn't feel like we came in and just wrecked their world.
No.
We're giving them a little bit of like a stair step to get to where they need to be.
Right.
All right. Number 4, this one's like a huge topic. And it can encompass a lot of things, but vendor shopping, from our trash service to our, a plumber we may send out.
Sure.
Speak to shopping vendors.
So shopping vendors is one of my main jobs, or managing our vendors is one of my main jobs, is how I should say it. A lot of times these vendors get very comfortable, especially the larger ones, the trash companies of the world, tend to escalate their prices on an annual basis. And if someone's not managing that, it can get out of control really quickly. And that affects both the tenants and the owner. So we shop our vendors on an annual basis, some of them semi-annually. We certainly look at it quarterly within our accounting department to be sure that nothing is changing, that we might have missed something in a contract or something that needs to be addressed. So shopping the vendors doesn't just keep the OpEx correct, but it also holds the vendors accountable to their service that they're providing for the property and the owner. And it builds a relationship between them and us as a company, so that if we have a large portfolio like we do, we tend to get better pricing when we are able to spread their services amongst multiple properties, where these owners that are self-managing, it might be a one-off for them with the janitor or the janitorial company or the trash company or the sweeping company for the parking lot, or if you need potholes patched. We have a paving company that goes services most of our properties, and so we get a fairly good discount, and that translates right to the OpEx to the tenants if it's being passed back through their leases, and straight to the bottom line for the owner.
Yeah.
So it is a big line item.
Right. And one thing I'll say about the way we run our property management business is we do all third-party vendors for all of our, and I'm not saying we'll be like that forever, but right now I don't see a better way to do that for our best service for our clients, because we don't have an in-house maintenance team,
yeah.
Repair division or anything like that, where a lot of times a lot of these companies are sending guys, and not just one guy out, but they're sending 2 guys out and charging the owner $100 an hour for
an
simple
hourly
maintenance
rate for those guys that work for their company.
Right. Whereas we're going in and say, hey, we've got maintenance guys that are third-party handymen that'll come out, and if we think the price is too much on a certain bid, we're going to bid it against someone else.
That's exactly right.
So anything that's of substantial nature, we're getting 3 bids on, and making sure we're doing our best, duty to the owner to get the best service for the best price.
Right. And response time is something that I left out that I feel like is very important for the tenants. And of course, for me doing my job, when we have these vendors that service multiple properties, they tend to respond to us very quickly.
Yeah.
Because they know that they're going to continue to get business within our portfolio.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not just a one-off, just nagging them to get something done. They know a lot of their business comes through working for us. So they show up.
Yeah.
And just a quick little sidebar on that case study, but a property we took over management for down in Brunswick County last year, just the renegotiation of the trash bill.
Yes.
Alone on that, just because it had gotten so out of hand, just the renegotiation of the trash bill ended up lowering the tie-cam fee at that property, which resulted in the tenants having a lower monthly payment. And you talk about want to see a happy tenant,
morale booster.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just money that's directly, you may hear, if you're not familiar with tie-cam, you may hear lower monthly payment. And
the lower the tie-cam we can make it, the more the base rent goes to the landlord.
That's right.
So if we can keep the tie-cam down and continue to escalate rents, then that is just more money to the bottom line for the owner.
100%. Yeah. It's not more, since the tie-cam just goes directly to the OpEx, the operating expenses, it's not like the landlord's getting less money. It gives us the ability to renegotiate that base rent.
That's right.
Just like you said. So, I mean, that was one bill.
Right.
So take that for what it's worth. All right. Last one. This is bonus item. Number 5 is going to be hands-on management and tenant relationships, because is part of our kind of DNA as a management company is we want to be hands-on with our owners. We want to be hands-on with our tenants. We really want our response to be something that people know us for. So we don't take on every client that comes through our door. We want to make sure this is someone that we want to build a relationship with on the long term. Yeah. So Andrew's on site, hands-on with tenants on a monthly basis, if not multiple times a month, depending on what the property is. So talk to us a little bit about nurturing those relationships with the tenants.
Sure. It's one of my top priorities. And recently we had a tenant that had some personal things going on and felt comfortable enough to reach out about those things. And we've been able to negotiate an ownership change of the business so the business can continue. And therefore the landlord doesn't have downtime and vacancy rate. So if I had not been there on a weekly basis and building those personal relationships, then it could have gone sideways where they felt like, well, I can't reach out to them. This is bad. They're going to be really mad at me. Right. Well, when you have that personal relationship with the tenants, they feel comfortable in reaching out if they're having issues, or if they want to make changes to their business or they want to add a service to their business. There's lots of reasons to have that personal relationship.
100%. And that use case right there is exactly the reason that it's so valuable to be out there, because in a general scenario, when they're being managed by a property management company that isn't hands-on, that maybe just sends them an email,
may not even be local,
may not be local. Yeah. That tenant is way more likely to just fly by night and just leave, just straight up leave. And then you're going to come the next month, you're going to look at hey, why haven't we gotten paid rent? And then if you're an out-of-town management company, I guess we got to send somebody down there, to check on things. They're not returning my phone calls or my emails there, and then they're just gone. Now we got vacancy. Now we got to relet. The landlord's got to pay more commissions on reletting. The vacancy's eating you alive because it's thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah.
But in that scenario, you had a relationship with the tenant. The tenant called you, felt comfortable. There's no downtime. There's no downtime. There's no lost money for the landlord. And it was really a win-win. We were able to help the tenant get out of their bad situation, with their lease responsibility. Mm-hmm. And the landlord had no downtime. So as kind of like a perfect example there. Well, I think we can put a cap on it with that. I mean, bottom line is there's 2 ways to create value. We can raise rents and we can cut expenses. These are some of our, favorite ways to look at expenses for owners and how we can, tighten things up and really just keep a watchful eye for them. So
that's a good way to say it.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, I think that the first thing, the rents, I think that's going to naturally go up.
Right.
That's not something that needs to be forced by a company or by an owner. That's going to naturally raise, the market's going to change, and other properties are going to be built, and it's going to force rents up. So, our focus as a management company, of course, the leasing side, we're going to take care of that for you.
Sure.
But the management side, we're going to try and keep those costs as low as possible so that as rents go up, your cost doesn't go up. So therefore you're making more money.
Right. And a lot of times we find that when we're dealing with maybe a new prospective client, a lot of times if we can go through those leases and look at their operating expenses, we can justify our management fee like that.
There's no question.
Yeah. So a lot of times it ends up paying for itself.
That's correct.
So yeah, well, this has been a good conversation, Andrew. Thanks for talking with me through this. And if you guys out there have any questions on property management, send them our way. If you're an investor or owner that are maybe looking for a management company or leasing company, the whole team over at Moss Warwick Matthews and Company would love to talk to you. So
yeah,
most appreciated.